Are you interested in how it all got started? Stay tuned. We'll talk about that and much, much more. You're listening to the Brothers in Fatherhood Podcast. So we got Jeff, Mike, Joe, Alfred. What I was saying earlier, and it kind of leads into the introduction, the whole purpose behind it generated from an idea that I had when I was out in Hawaii with Jeff, that's on the line, and Mike, that's on the line, Brandon as well. We used to golf together a few occasions, and when we went golfing, all us in the Army, we all had a couple things in common. We were all family men. We were all Black. So we would talk about things related to our families, and we often talked about situations with our kids. And that was the first time that was the first and only platform I kind of had talking things over what I was going through as a father with other like fathers. I found it very therapeutic and often refreshing to see that the shenanigans I was going through in my household, I wasn't alone.
I'm Jeff. I met Apollo in Hawaii within his first day or two of being there. And like he said, eventually we met a guy named Brandon, and then we met Mike, who's on the line. And so all of us kind of used to hang out in Hawaii. And like he said, we all split our separate ways. So I have two right now. Let's see, 6th grade and 4th grade. What about you,
Jeff? I'm Joe. I've been knowing Apollo since probably, I think, 5th grade, somewhere around there, maybe even the 4th grade. We all grew up together. I have 4 kids and one on the way. I got a 10, a 9-year-old, a 7, a 4-year-old, and then I got one expecting in June. But he's been running this by me for the last couple of years because he knows that I kind of do something similar with my family on Instagram and stuff like that. So taking me away from that and kind of just getting into where it's just all men talking about it, it was a good thing for me. So I hopped on it real quick.
Hey, Jeff, I'm Alfred. On Apollo again since the either 4th or 5th grade, so we grew up together. And I actually don't have any kids yet. I'm expecting May 23rd.
Congratulations!
It's going to be my first. Thank you.
Nice.
So Jeff, we cousins. Me and Alfred are cousins.
Yeah, me and Joe cousins.
So I didn't tell y'all. So I met them obviously in Hawaii as well. The last one to come into the group, but I have 2 kids, 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I am done. My 8-year-old will be 9 in June. So congratulations to you, brothers. You know, on the new ones coming along. But
Thank you. Appreciate
I'm not to have any more kids. I like my money. In this lifestyle.
Joe, so you with 4 kids and one on the way, do you have a support system where you are, and you think that contributes to why you have more kids?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick story. I know we're based on time. Originally, before I even had kids and got with my wife, I always said I wanted 6. This was just something in high school. It was just a number. 6 is my favorite number. When my wife and I got together and we were dating in college, we had been trying, for about 5 years before my first son had came. Just nothing ever happened. Then in 2009, it just kind of came. 2010, my wife was pregnant 6 months after my first. And that wasn't planned. The first one was planned. As we got to, after my second child, I actually quit my job as a sheriff down here in California. So the 3rd and the 4th wasn't a part of the plan at all, because I was actually going out on a limb to try to get into a totally different business, leaving the sheriff's department and going into and doing my own thing. So I was actually done. But my wife became pregnant 2 months after I left the force. And then the 4th child was planned on literally like a week notice. We talked about it. She was pregnant the next month. It was the craziest thing in the world. And then this one now, everything just kind of, nothing happened for 4 years. And all of a sudden, it kind of happened on its own after 4 years. So now that we're going to be at 5 this year, honestly, 6 ain't going to happen. I live in San Francisco. I don't live in the Bay Area. I'm in the heart of San Francisco. It's not cheap. It's not cheap at all. And as I don't care what nobody say, I mean, it gets a little easier as you have more, but no matter what, I feel like I'm going to be working for quite some time just to kind of give them the lifestyle that I want to give them. And as I get older, I'm getting a little tired. I'll be frank. So 5 is enough for me. It's more than enough.
what is around you in San Francisco as far as friends, family, that kind of thing?
The good thing is that, and I'm sorry to not answer your question. The good thing is that my mother and father-in-law live a block away from me. My family, though, is where I grew up at, where me, Apollo, and Alfred grew up at. But I do have a cousin that's in Oakland, but I never rely on my cousin because she's a lot older than me. She's like in her 60s. But my in-laws are literally a block away from me. So it helps. But a year ago, my mother-in-law suffered a stroke, man. So we haven't been really relying on her as much because she can't do what she used to could, being that she had a stroke. So we try to rely on friends in the neighborhood that we have here, or sometimes we just pretty much just take our kids with us. My mom, my dad, they come out here and help because they're 3 hours a drive away. But for the most part, I don't get too much me time, if that's the best way to say it. Like we pretty much haul them with us when we go places. With the exception of a couple of date nights here and there just to kind of get out the house, which then my father-in-law would do it. But I do have a support system here and it does help, but I haven't always had it.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. So everybody's been introduced. We have Mike Whitaker, Alfred Gibbs, Joe Lewis, Jeffrey Mosley. Like Joe was saying earlier, I've been kind of mowing this over for a while. Those moments out in Hawaii with the group of dads that I kind of already aforementioned. And because of that, I just been, hey, how do I replicate this platform or even export this platform so that other people can benefit from it? Not only myself, but other guys, other fathers out there that are looking to do better and learn from each other. So it's always been on my plate, but then I still got a day job. So it's been on my back burner. I'll work on it a little bit when I could, but now that this COVID-19 thing kicked in and I get to work from home, I think the most important thing I want to leave you with, as far as kind of introducing the whole concept of the podcast, it's a conversation amongst dads, all right? So all of us are dads. I separate and define dads different than fathers. I think any sperm donor, quite honestly, can be a father. It doesn't take much. However, it takes a special man to own his responsibilities and step up to the plate to be a dad. I think this conversation is amongst dads conversating about things that are going on in their lives and in their family lives that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and really having that honest, open conversation with each other about what it means to parent in today's day and age when you have multiple different issues and topics and subjects that you have to deal with, you have to explain to your children. So that's really what I'm getting at. The meat and potatoes, the heart, per se, of this podcast would be the conversation amongst Black fathers in this community, having that tough conversation. What would you do? What do you say? And how do we put it to our kids in this day and age without potentially having issues or creating issues for them later on down the road? And that's really what I'm getting after. Simple things like that, having the conversation. You may think that, what I think is the right answer, but Joe may have something totally different view of it, and it may make sense to you. I had a whole conversation with one of my buddies, Paul Young, about racism, and should we teach our children about, racist bigots out there and what racism is. He had a totally different take on it than I did, and it kind of had me thinking, like, should I? Really? His view, say for instance, his view was, hey, I don't want to cripple my kids and blaming everything on racism and that I'm not getting a fair chance. So I breezed the conversation to him and let him know that racism is a real thing, but I don't want to handicap my children later on in life by blaming everything on racism, the reason why they can't get ahead. I disagreed. I respectfully disagreed, and I gave my take on it, saying that you have to present your children and prep your children for the worst case scenario, because the worst case scenario could potentially happen. And if you don't prepare them, they're going to be out there ill prepared to face what the world has to offer. Just two different takes on the same subject from two different, Black fathers, similar in nature. That was the big difference. You know what I mean? So subjects like that And having conversations like that, I think, will be beneficial not only to us having the conversation, but to all the potential listeners out there, that other Black fathers are aspiring to be Black dads, and Black dads out there that are struggling with the same type of issues and subjects. The main thing is trying to get multiple different perspectives on the conversation. So it's not stale, it's not dry, it's not a group think. People are challenged and we push the conversation forward. So I think by having multiple different perspectives from multiple different people with multiple different backgrounds, we're going to have something not only is thought provoking, but entertaining as well. So that's what I'm going for. Is I don't want to, simply talk to myself, talking to a mirror. I want to be challenged. I want to think outside my preconceived ideas and really push the envelope to become a better father. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to be, a better father for my two gentlemen. Whatever I can do to progress myself is what I'm trying to do. All right. Like I said, my time out in Hawaii, that was the platform to kind of wet my whistle, so to speak, to try to get me to challenge my own ideas and say, hey, I don't always have the right answer. So let me ask a fellow brother in arms that may already have dealt with that same situation and see what he has to say. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, I have a lot of time to be indoors with my recording stuff, doing like an episode per week. I think the Black community is very much a show and tell type of community. So if you don't see it's Black people behind the voices, they may not believe it. That's just my perception of our community. So if you hear a whole bunch of Black or men talking about positive things about being fathers and having the conversation, Black people may not think we're actually Black unless we throw out a whole bunch of slang and be ignorant in the whole nine. And at least that's not my intent. My intent is to have a thought-provoking conversation. Raw, but thought-provoking nonetheless. So I think it would be good for people to be able to see our faces and see that we are trying to have a conversation, trying to better ourselves. It may help another that's trying to do the same thing. My main thing is to have the conversation. As long as we're creating great content and we're having fun, having these kind of conversations, to me, it's therapeutic. Instead of paying a therapist money, I'm getting it free by talking to my fellow fathers about certain things that are going on with me that pertain to fatherhood. That's therapeutic for me. Coming from my perspective, I'm with it all day. That's how consistent I'm willing to devote to this podcast. So that's my main point, is making sure that we have sound content, that we're not just speaking out of our ass. We're not just throwing things out there. And that's kind of what I got from all the other related podcasts. Yeah, guys that were just on the mic saying random shit. It wasn't like they were winging it. They just weren't having a thought-provoking conversation. They were just talking, and because they were fathers, they had a platform to say, hey, and then they were kind of like having a podcast and they were sprinkling in fatherhood what they could.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, smoke if you got them, I guess. But to me, that's not my intent. My intent is really to, how do you handle your child if they come to you and say, hey, if they're a boy, hey, I think I want to be a girl. Scott down the street is now Cindy down the street wearing dresses to school. I want to be like Scott now. I want to be Lisa instead of Larry. I mean, how do you have that conversation with your child if your child's a boy but believes he should be a girl? You know what I mean? At the age of 9. Those type of conversations that real fathers out there may or may not be having. Yeah. So
I think another one too, just to touch on it real quick, that what was the guy that was on last week? Was his name Sean? You said it was?
Scott?
Scott, yeah, Scott. And he got me thinking about it too. But this is something that I constantly think about, to where when you have kids, you say you're never going to, certain things you take from your parents and certain things you kind of literally don't take at all. But then as you notice, when you go to parenting, you almost sound just identical to your particular parents, even though you're not trying to do that. So like, for example, I got 4 and I always said I'm never going to whoop my kids because of when I was getting whooped when I was a kid. But yet, if I don't put my hands on my kids when I'm yelling at them and embarrassing them in front of their friends are all in public, if they are emotionally hurt, it's the same damn thing. I'm not putting my hands on them, but I'm doing something that's just as bad by actually hurting their feelings. So a lot of things that I've been doing lately, I have to monitor myself and take notes and be like, damn. So that's why when it comes to these particular talks, I got so much notes and stuff in my head, and they're like, damn, okay, I did this. Why did I actually do that? And it always resorts back to that's how I was taught. You know what I mean? Like, even though you don't want to be like your mom, your dad, it's in you to do it. And you have to actually talk to somebody else to get a different perspective so that you can then go actually try some new things. If you just parent on your own and do what you think is best, 9 times out of 10, you often doing what you were taught, and you just basically going to emulate your mom and your dad, grandma or your grandfather or whatever. And you ain't really implementing nothing new. You're not going to see it till someone else says it, but it's a natural thing to do. So I think talking about it is actually going to give brothers a different perspective. Like, damn, I didn't really think of that. You know what I mean? I didn't even, you got to start self-reflecting on your own, basically, and then start making changes from there.
Yeah, I agree. I think I call that following the model that you saw. Right. We all follow some type of model. I don't care if it's good, bad, or indifferent. That's how a bully is usually a bully, because his dad's bullying, whatever. He's been bullied. Whatever, and we do the same thing with me. I find myself reflecting often, like I'm like, why do my kids do that? And I'm like, probably because you do it. You know what I'm saying? Or just like my dad, and it irks me. I didn't want to sound like him, but hey, that's the motto I had. That's the motto I saw. Yeah, I agree with that, man.
It scars them for life. You know what I mean? And as a parent, we all want to do the best we can for our children, to make sure that we raise them properly, for them to be able to go out and face the world fully equipped. But if you do certain things, no matter how big they are to you or how small they are to you now, it may have tremendous impacts on them later on in life. You never know. That roulette thing, you never know. The little small thing that you thought it was minuscule to you now, by you setting them up for some type of punishment or whatever, whatnot, you embarrass them from their friends, goes on to shape how they view the world later on.
Hey, so there's a quote. I'll find the actual quote here in a few minutes, but it's paraphrased to some of that stuff that you guys are both talking about. And it says something like, if your kids come to tell you small things, and if you don't have time to listen to the small things, will they ever share the big things with you later? And it goes on to say, by the way, everything to a kid is big. And so, while we're adults and they want to come tell us about what have fallen off a rock or something, and we're like, whatever, no big deal. But if we have that kind of reaction to them, then the next time they fall off a rock, they may never say anything to us. So that kind of stuff really impacts them. And I don't know if you remember this, Apollo. So number one, the quote, I love the quote. I'll find it later. Like I said, I'm paraphrasing. But in Hawaii, my kid was like 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. And we had stools at the sinks in the bathroom so that they could use the bathroom and then be able to wash their hands. And I had an emotional reflection moment because my kid ran into the kitchen. It was like, Dad, you got to come see this. This is amazing. Like, he had this bright smile on his face. And I was like, oh, man, I'm about to see something amazing. And so I run into the bathroom. I'm like, what's up, man? And he's like, look, man, I peed in the sink. Right. So, the military man and adult Jeff was like, why are you peeing in the sink? Are you crazy? That's not what we do. That's not what I taught you. But then I was like, oh, man, this kid is 3 or 4 years old. And I said, he ran into me like he had just done the best thing ever. And so the way I handle the way I handle my reaction is going to impress something in his brain of what's going to happen in the future. And so in that moment, obviously I handled the situation, but there was no yelling or screaming. And I didn't tell him I was disappointed in him or any of that stuff. I was like, hey, thanks for telling me. By the way, we pee in toilets. But what if I would have screamed at him and been like, you crazy XYZ, are you this, that? If I had gone all the way left field, is he going to be afraid to tell me something a year from now or 6 months from now? Probably so.
I laugh because I peed in the sink before as an adult. So.
We're not talking about college days. I don't
think he's talking about college days either. Oh man. Oh man. So
Great story though. I like
yeah, that is that really has me reflecting on how I handle a lot of shenanigans. My oldest one does. He's the shenanigan king, and I just look at him like, oh, Jesus Christ. And every single time I go like this, he's like, oh, I did bad. I'm like,
you.
Yeah. So I say this a lot to people around here that kids aren't out there killing themselves because mom's not in their life. They're not out there losing their identity because mom's not in their life. They're doing all those things because they don't know who dad is, right? So how important is a father truly in the role of a kid's life, right? So not putting down mothers at all because they're amazing. Like they do so much for us. Trust me, they're nourishers. They do it all. They run it without men, when men are absent from the lives. But I know plenty of kids. I got a lot of friends who actually have custody of their kids, and their kids are doing so much better with the father than they were with just being with their mom. So that's one of the questions that I would love to pose. Like, how important is a father figure? I remember, like, what made me think of that is when you talked about your son, like, let me show you this. They are literally looking for dad's approval and then looking for mom's nourishment. Everything my kids do, Daddy, look. Like, what are you doing? He's bouncing the ball. Like, oh, good job. Like, I just taught you how to do it. Like, how am I supposed to be? She's looking for my approval. You know what I'm saying? They're looking to make me proud and all of those things. How important are you as a father in the whole development of the child? So I love it. I think this is going to be a great.
I love that question.
Yeah, same here.
No, this is what it's all about. This is the whole reason why I wanted to get the band back together again and have these conversations, because it challenges me to be a better father, to just going off of what the simple things that Jeff brought up and what Mike said has me thinking about certain things that I've recently done and said to my children where I didn't stop to think, hey, maybe I should listen. It may be minuscule to me. I'm busy doing A, B, or C, but listen to what they have to say, because those are precious moments you'll never be able to get back. And I don't know how it's going to impact him later on down the road that I didn't take the time and listen to these small things, because they'll just stop me and say, hey, Dad, I want to whisper nothing to your ear and just breathe in my ear. It's the most annoying thing to me, but I chastise them all the time. Don't waste my time. Don't waste my time. And they're just trying to show that they're trying to be humorous and trying to have jokes and trying to just have that quality time with Dad. And I'm just shooing them away like, hey, I don't have time for this.
Yep.
You don't know how that's going to positively or negatively impact them later on down the road.
Jeff, run that quote.
Oh, yeah. Hold on. Let me get back to the page. It's listen earnestly to anything your children want to tell you, no matter what. If you don't listen eagerly to the little stuff when they are little, they won't tell you the big stuff when they are big, because to them, all of it has been big stuff.
Who's
all his Sunday?
So it's said a bunch of different ways. So you can actually search it and find the quote that you really want, but it's not given to anybody specifically. Actually, it's given to a bunch of people because, it wasn't said 1,000 years ago. So, there's 10 people on there with their name on the quote. It could be Jeff Mosley.
There we go. It was a long time coming. thank God that I'm surrounded by brothers that are like-minded, that are trying to do something positive. I think this would be positive for the community and helping other brothers out that don't have this network worth of brothers around them. They can tap into this. I think we're doing a great thing for our community. Thanks for listening to Brothers in Fatherhood Podcast. Before we go, show some love for your new favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. We would love to hear from you. Drop the Brotherhood a line. If you have a subject you want us to tackle or you just want your voice to be heard, please send questions and comments to brothersinfatherhood@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Stay safe.